In the world of cricket, you get legends who are all about flair and charisma, always in the headlines. And then you get a giant from Antigua who built his entire legacy on two things: terrifyingly fast bowling and an almost complete, intimidating silence. So today, we're going to dive into the story of the one and only Sir Curtly Ambrose. And that phrase, that wasn't just some rumor. It was basically his motto, something he told journalists so often it just stuck. And this silence, it wasn't because he was shy. No, this was a weapon. It created this aura of pure menace. It just left batsmen standing there, filling in the silence with their own worst fears about what he was going to bowl next. And the first thing you had to deal with, well, it was this. The man stood at 6 feet 7 inches. That's over 2 meters tall. His physical presence was just immense. He didn't just bowl the ball, he unleashed it. Think about that. He's letting go of the ball from almost 10 feet in the air, creating a complete nightmare for batsmen as it came crashing down at this impossibly steep angle. So you've got to wonder, right? How did this quiet guy become one of the most feared players in the history of the sport? And get this, his story doesn't even start on a cricket pitch. It actually begins on a basketball court. And it just goes to show what can happen when raw, unbelievable talent gets focused. Now, you'd think a guy like this, a future legend, must have spent his entire childhood obsessed with cricket, right? Well, with Ambrose, his path to greatness was, let's just say, a little different. Growing up in Antigua, young Curtly was all about the basketball court. That was his game. Cricket, not so much. It wasn't until he was about 20 that his mother, who was a massive cricket fan, finally convinced him to give the sport a serious try. And once he did, wow, his rise was just meteoric. I mean, look at this timeline. He starts playing seriously in 1984. Just 4 years later, in 1988, he's pulling on that iconic maroon cap for the West Indies. We're not talking about a slow, steady climb here. This was a flat-out explosion of natural talent onto the world stage. So once he hits the international scene, he's not just there to make up the numbers. Nope, he was an absolute force of nature. This is the period where he really crafted that unique style and persona that would terrorize batsmen for more than a decade. So what was it? What made him so ridiculously hard to play against? It wasn't just one thing. You could call it the Ambrose method, just a perfect storm of his physical gifts and this relentless, pinpoint precision that batsmen just had no answer for. Let's break down his toolkit, because it was something else. That incredible height gave him that steepling bounce where the ball would just leap off the pitch, usually right at a batsman's throat. But he wasn't just some big guy throwing it hard. He combined that power with laser-like accuracy, just hammering away at a batsman's defense. Then he'd throw in a nasty bouncer to push you back, follow it up with a toe-crushing Yorkers you couldn't move your feet, and just for good measure, get the ball to move a tiny bit. It was the complete package. And then, when he finally got his man, you'd see this rare crack in that silent armor. The celebration was just pure energy and joy. Arms pumping, his famous white wristbands flashing. It was almost like a flock of doves suddenly taking off. It was this brief, amazing explosion of emotion. And then, boom, the silent, menacing focus was right back. But here's the thing. He wasn't doing it alone. His partnership with Courtney Walsh is the stuff of legend. They were the perfect 1-2 punch. Ambrose was the enforcer, the guy who could just rip through a team with a sudden, hostile spell. Walsh was the relentless workhorse who would just grind you down over after over. Facing them together, it was just a nightmare. Okay, this is where we get to the moments that really define his legacy. See, Ambrose wasn't just a great bowler. He was an absolute match winner. He was capable of turning a game completely on its head in just a few minutes with one of his devastating spells. All right, picture this. It's 1993. The series against their biggest rivals, Australia, is on the line in the final match. They're in Perth, on a pitch that's famous for being lightning fast, a bowler's dream. The pressure is just off the charts. So Ambrose gets the ball in his hand, and in a spell that lasts for just 32 deliveries, he snags an absolutely mind-boggling 7 wickets. And you know how many runs he gave up? Just one. A single run. I mean, that's not just a good spell. That's the kind of performance that legends are made of. He didn't just win the match. He single-handedly dismantled Australia and sealed the series right there. It was just breathtaking. And the crazy part? That wasn't some one-off fluke. This was his thing. Look at these other spells. Against England, 6 wickets for 24 runs, bowling them out for just 46. Another time against England, he took 8 for 45. He did this kind of thing again and again. When his team needed a hero, he just produced something magical. So, after he finally hung up his boots in 2000, you might think the story ends there, but with Curtly Ambrose, not a chance. His influence, his unique personality, they continued to make waves long after he bowled his last ball. Just look at the numbers. They really tell the story of just how good he was for so long. 405 test wickets is amazing on its own, but to get them at an average of just under 21, that means for every wicket he took, he gave up less than 21 runs. To do that over almost 100 test matches, that's true greatness. And check this out. This shows you who he was doing it against. He saved his best for the best. A massive 164 wickets against England, 78 against Australia. He wasn't what you'd call a flat-track bully, a guy who only does well against weaker teams. No, he lived for the big stage against the toughest opponents. After cricket, this man who barely spoke on the field started to find new ways to express himself and stay close to the game. And we got to see a whole new side of the man behind the legend. So what did he do? Well, he picked up a bass guitar and joined a reggae band. How cool is that? He also got into coaching and was the bowling coach when the West Indies won the T20 World Cup in 2016. Of course, the official honors came pouring in too. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and in 2014, he was knighted, officially becoming Sir Curtly Ambrose. And all of this leaves you with one big question, right? So much of Ambrose's power came from that mystique, from that silence. In today's world of 24/7 social media, where every athlete has a brand, could anyone ever build that same aura of intimidating mystery? His career is a powerful reminder of a different time, and it really makes you wonder, will we ever see a silent destroyer quite like him again?